Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're enjoying the start of SQL Bits. Is everyone having a good time? Yeah? Very energetic. Everyone's had coffee. Everyone's having a great time? Yeah, that's good. So, me too. So this is a non-technical session about a mental health topic. By the end of the talk, we'll learn of ways to deal with unhelpful thoughts and feelings, these little gremlins that hurt our productivity, our happiness, and our health. I want to preface this talk by saying the objective isn't to provide a silver bullet. I'm not advocating an approach that works for everyone, but at the same time, I don't want to talk vaguely and I don't want to give personal anecdotes about myself. I really want to look at concrete, practical methods and tools that we can use to improve our mental health as well as our overall wellness. This will be backed up by research and real-world evidence, and to ensure the accuracy of the information of this talk, I've worked on it together with a professional psychologist and had her audit the material. But if you find it interesting, you want to read more, you want to check out the references, I've also written it up as an article. So feel free to check this out on my website, Data Goblins, where I go into a little bit more detail on a few specific points. I don't just write about topics like this. Actually, in general, I tend to write more about Power BI, specifically adoption and tabular modeling. And you might be wondering, why is a data goblin writing about mental health? The reason is because I think, as we all know, this is a very important topic. And in recent years, it's only becoming more and more prevalent as a discussion, but also as a challenge for a lot of people. Because even in normal times, it can be difficult to manage everything going on in our lives. We're constantly busy with work. In our sectors, things are changing so fast. The tools are updating also very quickly. It's difficult to keep up. We have to stay connected with our teams, with our colleagues, as well as the overall business context of where we work. This costs us a lot of energy, a lot of time, and it really does take a lot. But on top of that, of course, it isn't just about work, right? We have everything going on outside of work. Family, friends, chores, a lot of fun stuff too. But we don't just stop these things while we're working. These things are still going on. And we have to do all that while trying to stay mentally and physically fit, which, I mean, come on, let's be real, that's not so easy. So we have a lot of pressure to perform, to succeed, to be our best selves. It really can be a lot. And this is just in normal times. Because the thing is, these are really not normal times, and they haven't been normal times for quite a while. We've wrestled with a global pandemic that has fundamentally changed the way that we live and work. It's still affecting us to this day, and we're still feeling the repercussions of that. When we get sick, we question, do I have COVID? Do I need to worry about getting someone else sick? Do I have to wear a mask? On top of that is everything that's been going on geopolitically. War in Europe, economic situation, climate change, and so on. It's an unending avalanche of unprecedented events. I don't think I'm alone when I say that sometimes it just feels like we're drowning. The last few years have been really hard for everybody in different ways. So if we're going to talk about mental health, we need to start by first admitting that. Because this is having a real impact on real people. In a survey conducted in January of 2021, 6 times more employers reported employees having mental health issues. This is recapitulated in a study by the World Health Organization showing that incidence of anxiety and depression has gone up 25% year over year. And this isn't just about mental illness, but overall general mental well-being. For example, burnout has increased by 9%, where in a survey conducted again in 2021, 52% of people surveyed, workers, felt burnt out or had experienced what they call burnout-like feelings. This impact is not just restricted to burnout, but a lot of negative mental health experiences. For example, knowledge workers in a survey conducted later experienced either burnout or imposter syndrome in 2021, 7 of 10, and 42% said that they experienced both. 40% of workers in this survey said that they thought that burnout was an inevitable part of success, which of course we know is not true. So everything is overwhelming. The last few years have not been normal, and so many people have just been overloaded. But what can we really do? Well, there are things that we can do. We are the main characters in our own story. We can steer this boat toward clearer waters. But it's difficult, right? It's difficult to know where to start. It's difficult to even talk about mental health to try to make it concrete. This is such a nuanced topic that has to deal with so many complex and personal things. So let's start small and work our way up. Today we're going to talk specifically about disruptive and unhelpful thoughts. Because often when you start to feel overwhelmed, stressed, it's more than just an abstract feeling. When you start to feel this stress, this loss of motivation, this overwhelming feeling, usually it's accompanied by these disruptive thoughts. I can't do this. I'll never finish. Nothing I do is good. As preparation for this talk last year, I put out a survey for other professionals, data professionals, to fill in, sharing their own experiences with mental health challenges and these kind of disruptive thoughts. One really stood out to me in particular. Someone who wrote, when I'm at home, I feel like I'm failing at work because I'm focused on my child, but when I'm working longer, I feel like I'm failing as a parent. Now, this is an example of these gremlins, these disruptive and unhelpful thoughts that really attack our professional growth and mental health. Maybe that one wasn't familiar to you, but maybe one of these next ones are. Everyone here knows more than me. I don't belong here. I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. I need to work harder. Everyone will find out I'm a fake. I'm not an expert. I'm an imposter. It's only a matter of time before people find out I've just been making it up as I go along. I'm falling behind. I won't ever catch up. Why do I even try? I can't focus. I have no motivation. I don't care. Nothing I do or make is any good. Nobody likes me. Now, these are examples of unhelpful gremlins. They attack us often without us even knowing. They come in many shapes and sizes, and maybe you're familiar with them. Things like anxiety, self-doubt, stress, imposter syndrome, and low focus or motivation. They cause real harm, hurting not only our productivity at work, but also our own health, both physical and mental health, and our overall happiness. So what can we do about this? How can we feel better? Well, we can fight back. For example, using a practical 5-step process to accept or change things in our lives. And today we're going to walk through this process step by step. This process first starts with hitting the pause button, to really take this heavy box of what we're feeling, to put it down and open it up, to pay attention to what we're thinking and how we're feeling, and to look at different aspects of our situation one by one, so that we can try to understand, can we actually do something about this or not? And if not, can we accept it? Can we accept the parts of this situation that we can't influence, so that we can focus on the parts that we can actually change? But to understand how we do this, we have to understand where these thoughts are coming from in the first place, to try to analyze them and think about it from a more helpful and healthy perspective. This leads us to some helpful actions, to taking a perspective where we can really go from looking at these unhelpful, untrue thoughts toward more helpful, actionable aspects of our circumstance. This will hopefully lead us to feeling better, but more importantly, to also persisting in feeling better so that we can prevent this from starting to affect us negatively in the future. Now, the premise of this talk revolves around 3 core concepts. First, mindfulness, which has been shown to be effective to combat a lot of these gremlins. It's simply about asking ourselves, what are we thinking? What are we feeling? Listening to our thoughts and feelings. And then asking whether, is this true? And is it helpful right now? Then breaking these parts of the situation up and trying to address what part of the situation can we accept because we can't influence it, and what part of the situation can we actually change, and how can we do that in a sustainable way. We'll talk about some tools that try to make this possible, try to make this concrete and give us a framework to do this, that are supported by a lot of evidence and research, specifically journaling, gratitude journals, learning journals, and we'll go through that at the end of the talk. So to illustrate this more concretely, we're going to look at some examples. First, our data analyst, Bonk, and Bonk the data goblin. He's been struggling a lot with the Power BI project lately, and we'll hear all about that. And Bink, the data engineer, also a data goblin, who's been struggling with adapting to her new team, a new position that she's been in. Now, Bonk, as I mentioned, he's started a new Power BI project. His organization is making this transition from more Excel-based reporting to Power BI. He doesn't know a lot about Power BI, so he has to learn it. This is giving him a lot of stress. He has a lot of deadlines suddenly. He has to make new data sets and reports, but he's just starting to get a grip of the basics. It's really starting to stress him out, and this isn't the only change that he's experiencing. He's also experiencing a lot of change in his personal life. And all of this is leading to him feeling very overwhelmed, really stressed out. He's starting to procrastinate, avoiding the Power BI trainings, avoiding looking at these PBIX files, and just paying attention to the parts of the work that he already knows. He says he has no focus or motivation, that he doesn't feel like doing it. I can't do this, he finds himself saying. This is leading to him feeling really unhappy and guilty. He can't stop thinking about work, and he has these feelings that he calls the Sunday saddies, where he's laying up at night on Sunday and he's just dreading Monday and having to get the question again in the stand-up, how's it going with that Power BI project? I'm a failure, he finds himself thinking as the night wanes on. I'm letting everyone down. Now, Bink also hasn't been going so well lately. She's been dealing with her own struggles. She's recently transitioned into a new team in her organization, a high-performance team, and they do some really exciting things, but she's been finding it really hard to connect with her colleagues. They're super enthusiastic about what they do. They're always going to conferences and they're writing blog posts, and she doesn't do a lot of that stuff, so it's making her feel a little bit out of place. She's starting to feel uncomfortable with her own knowledge and abilities, and she's getting a lot of anxiety and self-doubt. Everyone here knows more than me, she feels. I'm not doing enough. She feels pressured to be doing these things as well, to be doing these kind of extracurricular activities, even though she doesn't have a lot of time for it. She feels like she doesn't belong, even though the work is interesting and the people are really nice. She's really struggling with this imposter syndrome. Everyone will find out I'm a fraud, she's feeling. It's only a matter of time before they found out I just faked my way here. So Bink and Bonk, they're dealing with what I think are some really relatable challenges in different ways. How can they use this process so that they can start to feel better? So that they can start to do things to improve their mental health, their wellness? Well, the first thing is that they need to stop. Hit the pause button and just take time to really acknowledge what they're thinking and how they're feeling. This might sound really silly and trivial, but we really don't realize how frequently we're just going on like we're on autopilot. Often we're so busy that our thoughts and feelings, they just go unnoticed. Or even worse, we avoid them because we won't accept it or allow it. To give a simple example, I could ask you the question, how are you doing? And chances are the majority of the time you'll say, okay, good, great, fine. But when was the last time you really asked yourself, how are you doing? When was the last time you really sat down and assessed, are you doing okay? Take a second right now. Are you doing okay? How are you doing? Reflecting on that is difficult, and we are really surprised to realize we don't do that as often as we should. Because this is the first and perhaps one of the more important takeaways of this talk, is that it's okay to not be okay. We have to give ourselves permission, to give ourselves the right to feel the way we feel. We're not robots. We can't just go on indefinitely. You don't need to be good or great all the time. There's always this pressure to be happy and full of energy and like things are going great, but that's just not human. That's not part of the human experience. The human experience is having bad days, is not being okay. And it doesn't matter if others are dealing with different challenges that might seem bigger than yours, or that there's other things happening in the world that make your challenges feel small. You have the right to feel the way you do. Others' challenges don't invalidate your own. And this is important because knowing you're not okay is really the first step to feeling better. This is really the core essence of this mindfulness concept, being aware of what you're thinking and how you're feeling. It's the first step toward everything else. Mindfulness, if we want to define it, is basically just awareness that arises when paying attention to the present moment non-judgmentally. It's become really popular in recent years, and for good reason. A lot of research is really supporting the fact that mindfulness can improve your mental well-being and your overall health. When you hear mindfulness, you might be thinking of things like meditation, breathing, stretching, yoga exercises. Those are mindfulness activities, but it could be anything, any activity, guided or solitary, which draws your attention to what you're thinking and how you're feeling. So this might sound like an esoteric concept, vague maybe, but mindfulness has really been shown in a lot of scientific studies to reduce stress, improve well-being, among other positive effects. To try to make this more concrete, spoiler. So to try to make this more concrete, you can think about it like when you're dealing with this feelings of being overwhelmed and stressed, it's like carrying around this big heavy box. And that box is not going to get lighter until you put it down and open it up and take a look at what's inside. Practicing mindfulness is all about that, just putting down the box, opening it up, taking a look at what's inside. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What are these negative thoughts that are bothering you, this part of the situation that's making you feel stressed and overwhelmed? We want to avoid those things because they're painful, they're stressful, they don't make us feel good. But it's really the first step in starting to feel better. Once we have these things out of the box, we can start doing things with them. The first thing we should do is to categorize them, to ask ourselves, is this helpful right now? Is it true or neither? For example, everyone thinks I'm a failure. Not very helpful. Also not true. You don't know that everyone thinks you're a failure. You can't know that. That's literally not possible. I can't do this. That's not helpful either. You also don't know that you can necessarily do this. You haven't finished trying. I'm stressed because I keep procrastinating. Okay, maybe you're stressed. And yeah, maybe you are procrastinating. But is it helpful to keep reminding yourself of that, to loading that guilt on yourself? I embarrassed myself in that meeting, that conversation. Maybe you did, but the meeting's over. It's not very helpful to keep reminding yourself of that. So, how would Bonk and Bink apply this in their situation? How would they practice mindfulness? Well, Bonk is carrying around this big, heavy box that is his stress and overwhelming feelings about this Power BI project. He's going to put it down and open it up, but his specific mindfulness activity is that he really likes gardening. Gardening is something that he really loves doing, and typically when he comes home, it's always good weather in Goblin Town. So he sits down and he does some gardening for like 20, 30 minutes, just tends his garden, and that's when he's going to really reflect on how he's thinking, how he's feeling, and his situation. What he finds when he opens this box is a lot of things that of course make him feel very uncomfortable. I'm never going to finish this. I'm never going to learn Power BI. I'm lazy and stupid. I won't finish this anyway. I'm a failure. Now, Bink, she's going to do the same thing. She's carrying around this big heavy box of self-doubt and anxiety about her skills and knowledge. And she really likes to do stretches in yoga. It's part of her morning routine. So during that time, instead of listening to podcasts, she's just going to have some quiet time to reflect on how she's thinking and how she's feeling. And when she opens this box, she also feels a lot of these things that are making her not feel very good. I'm not doing enough. Everyone else is doing more. Everyone thinks I'm slow. I'm useless. I'm a fake. I should just quit. I'll probably be fired anyway. No one likes me and nothing I do is good. Now, these negative thoughts and experiences, these things inside the box, they have two things in common, right? They're not helpful and they're not true. So what do we do about them? Well, this leads us to the next step, acceptance. And it's one of the key parts of why this process can work. We need to accept, first of all, that we feel the way we do, that it's okay to not be okay. And hardest of all, we have to assess what parts of our situation can we not control, and what can we do to accept it, so that we can focus on the parts of the situation that we can actually influence. Now, this is easier said than done, obviously, because acceptance is not easy. It's really human instinct, basic human instinct to avoid things that hurt us, that make us uncomfortable. So it really takes time and effort. It's like physical exercise to try to work toward this acceptance. Unfortunately, all too often, when we try to avoid or get rid of unwanted private experiences, we simply create extra suffering for ourselves. Instead, we need to work toward, again, accepting how we feel and accepting what we can't control, so that we can commit to change the things that we can actually control, that we can influence. Now, this is the basis of what is known as acceptance and commitment theory, a really effective branch of psychology, and that's what this talk at the core is about. If this is something that speaks to you, that sounds helpful or interesting, and you really want to go into detail, I suggest looking at this book, The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. If you feel triggered by some of the things I've been saying, I can promise you this book is really going to fundamentally change your perspective. Now, to make this all a little bit more simple, accepting these things that we can't control, it's all about redirecting our attention away from unhelpful and untrue thoughts toward the more helpful and actionable aspects of our circumstance, where we can actually do something to help ourselves feeling better. So, to reiterate, we need to accept how we feel. It's perfectly normal. It's a part of the human experience to not be okay, to have anxiety, to deal with imposter syndrome, for example. Next, we need to try to assess what parts of this situation can we still change, and what parts can we not control. Examples of things that we can still change might include our own personal actions, our thoughts, our opinions, our perspective, and our future in general. What we can't control is other people, what they're doing, how they're thinking, how they're feeling, the circumstances in a broader context, maybe of the project, of the organization, of the world, and the past. Now, how can Bonk reach acceptance in his situation? Now remember, he's struggling with this big Power BI project. It's making him feel super overwhelmed and stressed. He's opened up this box and seen all these really uncomfortable gremlins that leap out and attack him. So what he's going to do is he's going to put these little gremlins, his situation, parts of it, into one of two buckets. Things he should accept because he can't do anything about it, and things he could commit to changing because he has some power to influence it. Now, first of all, he's feeling stressed and overwhelmed. He needs to accept that. We need to accept that before we move forward. That's okay. It's normal. It's perfectly normal. Next, he's been procrastinating. That's okay. He should accept that the procrastination has happened. Accept it. But he can control the future aspects of his procrastination behavior. He can't control the past procrastination, nor can he control the broader aspects of the project circumstances. Now, Bink is going to go through the same exercise, again, breaking parts of the situation into things she can accept or things she can commit to change. She's feeling a lot of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and that's okay. She has to accept that before she can move forward. Now, she understands that she can control her own perspective, her habits. She's worrying a lot about what other people are thinking. But reflecting on that, she realizes that she can't really control what others do and think. So that's perhaps one of the biggest and hardest things she has to learn to accept, that her perception of what her colleagues are thinking is flawed, and she can try to change that, but also that she can't change whatever they might be thinking, so it's not something that she should worry about. She can't know everything all the time, and she will make mistakes, also something she can accept. Now, the reason why we do this is because we want to get to action. We bucket things into things we can accept or things we can commit to change because we want to figure out basically, what do I do about this? How can I accept this? And how can I change the other things? Now, this is what comes next, defining those actions. How do we get to those actions? Okay, we've separated these things, like what I have to accept and what I have to change, but what can I actually do? And this brings us to the next step, trying to analyze and understand where these thoughts are coming from in the first place, why they're there. So we're dealing with these gremlins, and they don't make us feel very good. Things like, I'm a failure. Nothing I make is good. Everyone knows more than me. They're unhelpful and they're untrue. We've already established that. We need to remind ourselves, however, that these gremlins, they're not really physically here about to leap onto my stage and attack me. They are just words. They can't hurt us. When they come up, we can really give them a name, really remind ourselves, there's that gremlin. When you start to feel, I'm not doing enough, when you start to feel, I need to be doing more, you can give that a name, give that a face, give it that gremlin picture, and think, there's that self-doubt gremlin, I'm having that bother me again. And it helps kind of frame it in the context of, these are just words. We can recognize that our thoughts are nothing more or less than transient private events, an ever-changing stream of words, sounds, and pictures. But why do we get them? This is not something unique to us here in this room. It's something that everybody deals with. Why do our stupid brains create these gremlins? Why do we deal with these unhelpful and untrue thoughts? If they're so unhelpful and untrue, why do we have them? Well, the reason is because behind every unhelpful gremlin is a value that we want to realize, something we want to achieve. And it's our emotional brain's way of pushing us to act toward those values. Now, what values would be behind these thoughts? I'm a failure. Well, I want to succeed. I want to experience success. I want to do a good job. Nothing I make is good. I want to make good things. I want the things I make to help people. I want them to find it useful. I want them to use it. Everyone knows more than me. Well, I want to learn. I want to feel like I'm growing, like I'm progressing. I want to fit in with my peers and to be a part of something that's bigger than me. If we can find the value behind the gremlin, the little negative thoughts and experiences, this helps us go from these subconscious, unhelpful, untrue thoughts toward conscious, helpful actions. It's much more helpful and also pleasant to focus on these values and asking what we can do about them, rather than letting these gremlins constantly pick at us and drag us back. It's the prelude to committed action. If these gremlins are so damn unhelpful, what helpful actions can get us closer to our values? Now, how would Bonk do this? Remember, he's been dealing with this overwhelming Power BI project. He's broken it apart. He's assessed some parts of this he can control, so he can change it. Some parts of it he can't. But where are these coming from? Why is he feeling this way? Well, he's feeling all these things, these gremlins, things like, I'm never going to finish, I'm lazy, I'm stupid, I'm a failure, I don't want to deal with this, I don't care. Well, he wants to make his deadlines. That's a good thing. He really wants to achieve this. He wants to learn, he wants to do new things, he wants to progress and work with new technology, he wants to succeed, he wants to help the project to move it forward. So what actions could he take, no matter how small, to get him closer to these values? If he focuses more on these values instead of on these unhelpful gremlins, it's going to be much easier for him to reflect about what he can actually do to improve the situation for himself. Bink, similarly, has been struggling with adjusting into this new team. She's having a lot of these negative thoughts like, I'm not doing enough, everyone else is doing more, everyone thinks I'm slow, I should just quit, no one likes me. But she wants to be of value to her team. She wants to fit in, she wants to learn, she wants to grow in her career, to progress, to advance. She wants to be able to fit in the peer and colleague community that she's having. She wants to be a part of this group of experts. So what actions could she take, no matter how small, that would get her closer to these values? Again, focusing on these values that are more helpful and positive rather than these unhelpful, negative thoughts and experiences. Now, to give it really an end-to-end example from start to finish, congratulations, you're starting a new job tomorrow, got a new position, but it's giving you a lot of stress and anxiety. That's okay, that's normal. but it's really starting to weigh you down, this heavy box that you're carrying around. You can't even pay attention to my talk because you're just so worried about it. So you need to put that box down, to open it up and take a look at what's inside. Reminding ourselves that feeling this anxiety and stress, like that we're really feeling that, that's okay, to hit that pause button. We see these things, these negative thoughts and experiences, like we're not going to meet expectations, we won't fit in, these worries. These are the gremlins that are kind of attacking us, that are bothering us. We break this apart into things we can accept and things we can control. For example, it's perfectly normal to feel anxious when starting a new position. We have to accept that that's just normal. And we can't change the fact that we're starting a new job. You're not going to bail on that job just because you're feeling anxious about it, right? So instead, what are some actions you can take to help prepare ourselves, to set expectations, to equip ourselves with the right skills or abilities so that we can start successfully in our first days? And where are these thoughts coming from? What are the values behind this? What do we actually want? Well, we want to do a good job, we want to succeed, we want to fit in, we want to meet new people and connect with them. So we should remind ourselves, first of all, that we're capable of this. We're here for a reason, and we need to find a way to more constructively prepare ourselves, to focus on these values and to try to ask ourselves what we can actually do, looking at those rather than just letting this heavy box weigh us down. And this leads us to the culmination of action. And this might be a bit anticlimactic. You're thinking, okay, tell me the action, I'm going to do it. But I have to remind you there's no silver bullet. Mental health is a lot like physical health. It's not something you solve with just one action. It's work, it requires discipline and consistency, and it's something that you really have to do every day. And over time, it will gradually, every day, get better. But what actions can we take? What are some things we could do? So again, we have these two buckets. That's where we're at right now. Things we have to work toward accepting and things we could try to change. Actions, on one hand, are things that help us accept what we can't control. And on the other hand, things that help us make realistic, sustainable changes that align with our values. The key word is realistic and sustainable, so that we don't put unnecessary pressure on ourselves to change, which will just create more issues. But of course, these actions differ for every person, for every challenge. So what are some tools and things that we can do that help steer us in the right direction? Well, for acceptance, it's all about continuously practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us reach this acceptance. This could be, again, doing things like yoga, exercise, meditation, quiet breaks, but it's just any activity that focuses on the present moment and something that you're doing every day. Just 5-10 minutes to reflect and to recognize, to ask how are you feeling, and to break apart the situation, to ask yourself, is this helpful right now? Is this true? And to break it apart into these buckets and to try to connect to the values, to remind yourself of the values that are behind them so that you can keep focusing on those values, which will be more helpful and more positive. Now, one of the ways that's been shown to be most effective to do this is using journals. It's very simple, it's very easy, and there's a lot of tools out there, there's a lot of different kinds of journals to make this possible. So journals, they help us be mindful, but they can also help us change. Basically, they provide a framework for us to be consistent and to have this discipline, because we just enter in the journal every day. I'm going to talk about 3 different kinds of journals specifically, and what they are, how you could use them, and the evidence that shows that it can have a positive impact on your life and your mental health. So the first one is one of my favorites, to be honest. The learning journals helps you stay mindful of your learning and growth. So let's say you're struggling with imposter syndrome and self-doubt. I'm not learning enough, I'm not doing enough. Take a piece of paper, put it beside your keyboard, it's the start of the day, and write down every new thing that you learn throughout the day on that piece of paper. Then at the end of the day, go through that list. It's a receipt of everything that you've learned. It's proof that you're learning. You can't deny it. And repeat this tomorrow. Repeat this the entire week. Repeat this the entire month. But what would this look like? Well, for example, these could be technical stuff that you're learning, like if it's Power BI, how to view Power Query in Tabular Editor, what is incremental refresh, how do you set it up, how do you change it? But it could also be non-technical things, and this is what's important. You have to note down literally everything that you're learning. How certain products in the company are shipped, if you're embedded in a specific organization. What are intercompany sales, and why do they happen? And if you press the Windows key and the plus key, you get emojis. So what this is going to give you is at the end of the week, you are going to have, like, you know, at these restaurants where they pile the receipts on top, you're going to have something like that, but instead of being reminded of how much money you spend at Chili's, you're going to be reminded of everything that you've been learning throughout the week. It helps you be mindful of your learning experiences, your productivity. It gives you a sense of accomplishment, a source of motivation. It helps you accept that you're learning because it provides you literal physical proof that it's happening. You're seeing that progress bar fill up. Now, this is just one kind of journals. Another one is gratitude journals. Gratitude journals have perhaps the most evidence in literature to really show that it has a positive effect, and that's because of the power of gratitude. And that might sound like a really esoteric thing to say, but it really is true. Gratitude, in essence, it's a feeling of appreciation toward another or in general. It derives from reciprocity. So you do something for me, I'm appreciative of that, I'm grateful, so I do something for you, and we together are more likely to succeed than if we were alone. But gratitude has evolved to be something much bigger. It gives us the ability to refocus our attention to more positive aspects of our situation. It's very powerful in the ability to counteract negative feelings. It's one of the strongest indicators of life fulfillment. So, in a nutshell, people who experience more gratitude are shown to have an overall higher satisfaction with how their life is going and higher well-being. So the next question is, of course, how do we experience more gratitude? And that's where the gratitude journal comes from. Just a very simple, easy way for us to try to have more gratitude on a daily basis. We're just practicing it. It's like a skill that you develop. It's not something that you just innately feel all the time, necessarily. So a gratitude journal, in a nutshell, it's just noticing what happened today, trying to appreciate the good things, reminding yourself that there were good things there, and writing down 1 to 3 things that you're grateful for. It's really supported by scientific evidence to improve happiness and well-being if you're doing it for a period of at least 4 to 6 weeks. So don't just do it once and think like, oh, damn, I don't feel happy. It's really something that you have to persist over a period of time, right? It's like physical exercise. So an example could just be something really simple. How am I feeling today? Yeah? Maybe today was just not a very good day. But note that down, that's how today was. But what is something good that happened? Well, normally, we had a 2-hour meeting, it was canceled, so instead, we had a quiet lunch, we just pet the cat. So that was nice. What could we be grateful for? Well, the project's moving forward. We're making progress. There was really kind of some positive vibes at the end of the stand-up today. Someone on LinkedIn reached out. They asked a question about Power BI, and we helped them answer that question. That was pretty cool. And perhaps something that we can always fall back on, we're healthy. Our family's healthy. We're safe. When we go through our day, it starts to sometimes feel a little bit like this. It's messy, it's wavy, it's a bit out of control. Having this little period at the end of the day where you can write in this gratitude journal, it helps us hit that pause button to kind of smoothen things out, to remind ourselves that there were good moments there, so that we can kind of smoothen out that line just in time for us to go to bed. It helps us be mindful of our feelings, and it helps us be mindful of the fact that there are good things to be grateful for. It helps us divert attention toward those positive things. Now, these 2 journals have been more focused on acceptance, but what about change? How do we change? Well, there is a type of journal that can help us do that, and these are habit journals. Basically, this just helps us be consistent and to think through our change. We have a current state, where we are right now, and we need to define our desired future state. Where do we want to be? Why? How are we going to get there? Habit journals, what they do is they help you try to think about that connected value. So remember, we're dealing with these negative thoughts and experiences. We're reminding ourselves through mindfulness, what are the values behind there? Then we focus in on that. How do we achieve that? What are some helpful actions we can take to achieve that? So what specifically could we change? And how will we do it? What action will we take? And when will we do it? Timelines and goals. So again, remember the example, I don't know enough. I really don't feel like I'm doing enough, so on. Well, the value behind that, I want to succeed, for example, in creating good Power BI solutions. So making it specific, making it related to the context that's making you feel stressed and overwhelmed, for example. Well, what can you do about that? What could you change? I can learn about areas of Power BI where I don't know enough. Okay, but what specifically could we do? Could read that DAX book. But how are we going to do it? Well, maybe we block out half an hour in our day at lunch, and then we read through 5 pages and do 2 exercises, and we do that every day. And then we track that we're doing it every day, and we follow up on it. A habit journal, it's just a structure that's designed to help us achieve change, like a framework. It helps us define the behavior that we want to change, but to also set up the triggers and steps. Most importantly, it helps us track it and reflect on how to improve. Now, when you're thinking about these journals, there's a lot of things that you could use. You could, for example, buy a physical journal. And the ones I recommend are from Kurzgesagt, is a YouTube channel that talks about various topics, but they sell gratitude journals like this one. So it's really, really nice. It's very structured, but it also has a lot of art that kind of motivates you to move forward. And it guides you through the process. It also teaches you a little bit how to do it. So this is an example of one that I use, or have used. You could also use applications if you don't prefer to use pen and paper. Like Dailyo is a really nice one for acceptance, or the 5-minute journal just helps you track your mood and then enter a gratitude entry, for example. So habit, for habits, habit journaling, you could use Habit Bowl is one that you can have a lot of success with, something I've used in the past and has been very nice. It just kind of replicates that structure, that experience. But let's say you're not, you don't want to use a physical journal, but you also don't want to, buy an app, use an app, whatever. You could always make your own. You could do something as simple as an Excel file, whatever, a Word file, or you could do something else more fun. Like what I've been doing lately is I use these buttons. So you push the button. I'm not trying to sell you something. So you push the button to indicate how you're doing. Like today was a good day, today was a bad day. So far today is a green button, so don't make it a red button. And then it will then push through the entry. It will trigger a flow in Power Automate. Send a message with the team's adaptive card. Just what 3 things are you grateful for? 1, 2, 3. And then it enters it in a Power BI data set, and then there's a Power BI report, and that's your gratitude journal. But it's just a really trivial, fun example, right? If that's something that makes you feel good, go for it. The most important part is the behavior, right? The consistency. The fact that you are practicing mindfulness. You have to do it every day. Again, it's like physical fitness, right? It's something that you really have to work toward, to exercise, to keep up. But don't pressure yourself, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to do it every day. If you miss a day, nothing bad is going to happen. You won't win every battle, but that doesn't mean you're losing the war. Yeah? If we are mindful, we take helpful actions using tools that help us be consistent, we can feel better. We can. Sooner, and having more fulfilling lives both at work and at home. But that's not where the story ends, right? Once we've started to feel better, it doesn't mean that we stop. Once we're physically fit, we don't stop exercising for the rest of our lives. So again, mindfulness, it's a lot like exercise. The most important thing is that you find something that works for you, and you build the habit to do it regularly, to be consistent and disciplined, so that you do it even when you're well. So, the next time your gremlins are about, stop, hit that pause button, listen to the gremlins, put down that heavy box that you've been carrying around all day for the last few days. Recognize what you're thinking, how you're feeling. Open that box up. look at these things inside, the parts of your situation, and ask, is this helpful? Is this true, what I'm thinking right now? Ask yourself, what part of this could I control? Then either work toward accepting what you can't control or committing to change what you can. And to do this, you could use mindfulness tools, for example, like what we talked about, learning and gratitude journals or habit journals. And never ever forget, you can do this, damn it. So thank you very much for your attention, for the organizers for putting the conference together, the psychologist for helping me auditing this presentation and making sure that it was accurate. Please, provide feedback if you like. Also, feel free to check out all the sponsors. Really thankful that they can sponsor to make events like this possible. So yeah, thank you very much.